fine. I know I keep saying I'm gonna find, a program where I'm like able to do several. Oh, see, now you can see. There we go. Okay. Hi, Tanisha. Here we are online. Still using 2 devices. It's on my like super important do this goals for the week thing. Yay! To get myself onto some kind of program where I can broadcast live to more than one thing at a time. So then my eyes won't be like wonky on Facebook when I'm looking at my Instagram device, or on Instagram when I'm looking at my Facebook device, for example. Anywho, that will happen. Soon it will happen. Yes. Oh, I just got a notification that I started a live video. Well, that's amazing. Yay, I'm glad I started that live video. Good for me. Woohoo. Yay. Welcome to live office hours with Dr. Shannon Coates. Oh, no worries. No worries, Tanisha. I'm all good. With Dr. Shannon Coates. Shannon Coates. Woo. Let's say it that way. As you know, my name is Shannon Coates. I just said it a few times, so probably you know that now if you didn't know it before. And I'm a voice teacher and an educator. I work with voice teachers to maximize their voice ped game, but not just the fundamentals, right? So not just anatomy and physiology, which, do that too, but not just the anatomy and physiology, but how to teach the things. Hi, Brianne. Yes, that would be Dr. Shannon Coates. How to teach the thing, right? So not just the things, but also how to teach, which is the one of those things that we don't get enough of, I think, in our voice pedagogy classes, for example, in our programs. So often we don't get the opportunity to actually teach for someone and have our teaching mentored, if you will. And over time and with different kinds of students and all that kind of thing. So that is part of what I do, which is to really kind of break down ways we can be better teachers. So not only do we have that information, but we can get it to our students in an even more efficient way. So today, someone mentioned that, or I mentioned in office hours, maybe last week, I mentioned in office hours last week, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here, that mimicry is a great way to work in the voice studio. And now I can't find my notes. Where did I put them? There it is. Mimicry is a great way to work in the voice studio. And then someone was like, oh, tell more about that. And I was like, oh, but I have a live on it. But then when I went back and looked, I don't have a live specifically addressing mimicry. It's something that I definitely... if you've worked with me in a practicum before, so in a group where we're working on our teaching and, we're sharing examples of our teaching and we're working on the actual teaching part of the teaching. So if you've been in one of my practicums before, or my teacher training practicums, you will know that this is something that I talk about and that I have talked about for quite a long time. But apparently I haven't done a specific live or sort of training online about mimicry. I have talked about it in passing in a couple of different things. So I will, on Facebook anyway, I will put a link to, are you teaching a voice ped lesson or are you teaching a singing lesson? So I'll put a link to that one on Facebook and I'll see what I can do to get it onto Instagram as well. But I refer to mimicry in that and to the reasons that we want to have more singing and less talking in a voice lesson. So I refer to it in that. So if you want sort of a little bit more of the reason behind why I'm talking about mimicry, take a look at that live, and maybe even this week I might have it in a blog post too. So it might be all blogged up. Maybe even this week. We'll see. I'm working my butt off over here. Sometimes all the things don't get done. That's all I can say. Anywho, so the terminology mimicry really heavily influenced and came directly from Heidi Moss's work. The way that she talks about mimicry really lines up with what I had been observing when I was as I work with young teachers and beginning teachers and experienced teachers, but specifically when I'm working with beginning teachers. And one of the things that I have always had as a primary assessment tool in my undergraduate voice pedagogy courses, and when I'm working with beginning teachers and when we're working on teaching, one of the primary assessment things that I have had always, or criteria that I've had, is what is your speech to song ratio? In other words, how much speaking is going on versus how much singing is going on in the lesson, and trying to get that speech to song ratio to where we're doing a lot more singing than we are speaking in the lesson. And again, all of the reasons for that are to do with neurobiology and like how motor learning works in the singing body and all that kind of stuff. And I have talked about that stuff before. And so you can take a look at some of the back stuff. Like I said, are you teaching a singing lesson or are you teaching a voice ped lesson is one of them where I've talked about that. But once I started to listen to the work, started to sort of get on board with some of Heidi Moss's work and see what she was doing, I realized that there's actual science behind the reasons, right? So I didn't really know the reasons really behind why we want to have more singing and less speech until I started to look at some of the stuff that Heidi Moss did, and also Lynn Helding and some of the other folks who are doing the neuro work with singing. But so that's when I started to take what I had been calling like your speech to sing ratio, and I had been calling it a couple of other things and saying like mimicry, because that's what Heidi calls it. And so she has actual lessons. Heidi Moss has actual lessons where she calls them songbird lessons, where students come to the lesson and they literally like she sings a small section maybe once or twice, and then the student sings it back and sing back. So there's like no voice ped going on. Voice ped. It's all learning by this like, you do the thing, I do the thing, you do the thing, I do the thing, learning in that way. And when I started to work that way really intentionally, once I sort of got permission from, like I said, I'd already been observing that this is a better way to work, and I'd already been doing it in my own teaching. But once I sort of got permission from like, oh, Heidi Moss is actually doing like whole lessons where there's no talking, where it's literally just like mimicking, and they're really successful. I started to be really intentional about that, as well as starting in my own teaching, but also as well as being really intentional about articulating this when I'm working with teachers. So that's where this is all coming from. So what I want to talk about today is how to implement more mimicry, not necessarily why, but how to implement more mimicry in your voice lessons. And the three main sort of, what can I say? The three main reasons that people give me that they don't necessarily believe that the mimicry is going to work, or that they're concerned. Three main concerns, let's do it that way. Three main concerns about mimicry in voice lessons, and my answers to those. So how to implement more mimicry. Basically, rather than explaining something, sing it. So when we're talking about a vocal exercise, rather than explaining what you want, sing what you want. Here's what I want it to sound like. Do the singing. Let them sing back. You could do it twice. Let them sing back. When you're learning repertoire, so that's in vocal exercises, to kind of line things up for technique, for coordination, to start to get coordination. When you're working on repertoire, there is nothing wrong with learning repertoire, even Western classical arias, nothing wrong, and recits, with learning repertoire by listening to it. Here's how you do it though. Here's how you do it. It's really important that you do it the right way. So The reason that we all in our Western classical training heard that we're not supposed to listen to music to learn it, we're not supposed to listen to learn, we're not supposed to listen to learn. The reason that we heard that, and the reason that it isn't useful necessarily the way that we were doing it in the old way, is because when you learn something by listening to the whole recording over and over and over again, you're not going to learn it well. Your ear is not going to be able to focus in on and get the motor skills necessary to have learned that thing well, right? You just can't. It's too much information, and it's way too much coordination that you're trying to require your brain to do with so much information. It's just too much information. Plus, you also then sort of take on any little mistakes that person might have made. You also take on, and I'm talking really specifically about Western classical music here, you also take on any kind of their musicality, like you take on all of their artistic choices, you kind of take them on, and it becomes rote, right? So not only do we not learn it well in terms of accuracy, we also then don't learn it well in terms of like making it our own, right? Because it's sort of this like so much information, plus I'm now taking on I'm just taking on your interpretation, and I'm not making it my own. So the way that, and I will say as well, that in our contemporary styles, especially our popular music styles, boy, do we ever have a different way of learning music, right? Like that, like, don't listen by learning is really specific to Western classical training, like really specific to Western classical training. And in our popular styles, we often, the best way to learn it is to listen to it. But again, there's a specific way to do it. That's really, really good. Okay, so that's going to make it, but often the best way to do it is to learn by ear, because like, the rhythm and the feel of lots of popular musics, you can't learn from the page. You can't learn from looking at it. You've got to learn by listening and getting it in your body and having having the cues from the other people who have sung this repertoire, right? Like this isn't necessarily stuff you can learn from the page. Like oh gosh, her name has gone right out of my head. As per usual, when I am live, can't remember. Canadian singer-songwriter, uber famous, blonde, paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Like that one? Yeah, you're welcome for that, by the way. Joni Mitchell, thank you. Okay, yeah, I thought of that all by myself. Yes, I did. Pulled it down out of like somewhere back there. So try learning Joni Mitchell from the music, like from the written music, right? Just try to learn Joni Mitchell by like tapping out those rhythms and putting thank you, Brianne, yes. And oh, Kathy, yay. Yes, like try learning those rhythms by just like clapping out the rhythms and like, and trying to get the right notes in the right rhythms. I dare you, go. Don't listen to Joni Mitchell at all. Just go like pull the score off the shelf and try to learn it. Guaranteed you're gonna stink at that. It's gonna be so stinky. So in our popular musics, we have learned through the ear for a long, long time. Learning music by mimicry, however, this is the way that we want to learn music by mimicry. We want to have short, tiny, like 4 bars long, maybe 1 phrase long sections that we're listening to 3 or 4 times, and especially if you're listening to Western classical, especially if you're learning, say, an aria, for example, you're going to listen to maybe 3 or 4 different singers do it as well. And hopefully, say, if you're learning an Italian aria, hopefully you're going to be listening to someone whose Italian is impeccable, and you're going to try to listen to, and you're going to just listen 3, 4 times, right, Brianne? I know, right? Reading the music makes you like, you can't do it. Listen to that Italian aria maybe 3 or 4 times, especially, to that 4-bar phrase, 3 or 4 times, sing it. Listen, sing, listen, sing. If you're in a lesson, you can do it the same way, where the singing teacher is going to learn the music and listen, sing a 4-bar phrase, maybe 2 or 3 times, you sing it. Me, you, me, you. takes a long time, and I'm not, I want you to know that I have worked this way now with a few people in Western classical music, and it is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It's unbelievable. So, and I just want to be clear here too, we're talking about two different ways to use mimicry in voice lessons. One is to get technique, and one is to learn or to get coordination, right, for singing, and one is to learn music. So right now I'm talking about how to learn music using mimicry. And as I said, we do this very, very well in our popular musics, and we tend to force our Western classical folks to only learn from the music, right? So what we want is just got a little notification there. I'm just gonna throw that up there. Yeah. So what we want to do is or a way to use mimicry to learn music in Western classical music is to do this like tiny phrase at a time, tiny phrase at a time, tiny phrase at a time. And what I have done, which has been very useful, is I've asked the singers to have the IPA along with the text in front of them as they're doing this, right? So they're listening to the aria, they're listening for like 4 bars or a phrase, for example. They have the words and the IPA in front of them. So they're mouthing, they're seeing what that looks like, and they're kind of tasting it in their mouths. And then they sing it back, and then they listen again, and then they sing it back, and then they listen again. And I don't let them have the score, the actual score, until like a week, 2 weeks in, a week in, until they're basically able to do this whole thing, the whole aria, basically by like, I mean, almost from memory, right? So almost from memory, they can almost go through the entire aria from memory. Then they get the score, and then they can do a little bit of like tweaking. Oh, that's right. This is, I wanted to make this like a little bit longer here, or I wanted to make this. But let me tell you, the folks who I've worked with this way in Western classical music, I do not have to do the amount of tweaking that we have to do at the end and correcting we have to do at the end is so minimal. It is mind-blowing how minimal it is. The languages, I don't have to do, like barely have to do anything with languages. To barely need to change anything with languages. Maybe their T is a little wet here, or maybe they didn't quite round the lips a little bit on this vowel, or blah, blah, blah. But like truly the languages are like mind-blowingly clean. And so often what happens is because I'm making them listen, exactly, because they've learned coordination by mimicry rather than learning the coordination from what's on the page. So I'm going to go back and talk about this in terms of learning technique in a minute as well. But learning music, they're learning the music by, this is my tonal goal, my tonal goal, my tonal outcome goal. This is what I want it to sound like. And because I'm hearing how I don't have to say to you, oh, you need to increase breath energy and open the jaw a little bit in order to do that, major sixth above the staff, like that ascending interval above the staff. I don't have to say that to you. Yes, the tonal goal, and I don't have to say that to you. And in fact, once they see it in the music, they're like, oh my gosh, I was singing that high? What? Wow, that interval was that big? Oh, didn't know that, right? Didn't know that was so crazy. Oh, what do you know? And in fact, sometimes when they come back to the music, the singing is like reduced. The actual musicality is reduced. Everything becomes reduced because they're looking at the music and kind of reacting to the music rather than going toward that tonal goal, right? We're going toward that tonal goal. And the body learns to coordinate. The body can learn to coordinate by listening to what it needs to do rather than by me telling you how to coordinate, right? So I've talked about this before as well. Oh, hi, Kate. Yes, tonal goal, exactly. So that's the learning music part where you can get a little bit of mimicry going on in there. in terms of learning music. And then coming back to tonal goals, you can also then do the demonstration for technical outcomes, right? For coordination, for tonal goals, for technical outcomes. So for example, if you are working on agility exercises, if you're working on how to mix in the upper register, if you're working on how to mix in the lower register, if you're working on passaggio, if you're working on a little more breathiness in the tone, if you're working on contemporary sounds, maybe you're working a little more twang, or maybe whatever it is that your technique, that you're working toward in technique. Demonstrate, demonstrate, mimicry, mimicry, mimicry. And here are the three things that people say to me when I say, you should do that. First of all, what if I can't do the thing myself? So lots and lots of Western classically trained voice teachers saying to me, yeah, but I can't actually demonstrate a high belt, so what am I supposed to do with that? What if I am a low singer and I'm working with a high singer, or vice versa, right? So what if I'm a, for lack of better terms in Western classical terms, what if I'm a classically trained soprano and I'm working with a bass? What if I'm an adult working with a child? So the tonal outcomes are going to be, on the face of it, the tonal outcomes are going to be different, right? So especially if there's lots of insecurity around, like, what if I demonstrate this incorrectly and then they're not going to be able to line things up. So a couple of things to consider with the first one. What if I actually can't demonstrate this? What if I can't demonstrate a high belt mix? What if I can't demonstrate whatever that, what if I don't have the legato I'm asking for in the singer I'm working with? All of those things, right? What if I can't actually demonstrate it? First of all, try, because you never know what's going to happen in the moment. When you ask your body to coordinate toward a particular sound, sometimes you'll be amazed what will happen, what will come out of your mouth. So try, because sometimes your body will coordinate for you. Yes, not always, but sometimes you'll be like, whoa, my body just did that thing because I asked it to, and look at that, I just did it. So first of all, try. Secondly, either demonstrate a third below, or an octave below, or a fifth below. I'm talking about, say, something like high belt. Demonstrate what the actual coordination is. Just do it a little bit lower where you actually can make this happen. So here's the whole thing about the mimicry. The tonal outcome, yes, is what we're using as the way to get to the coordination. But really what we want is the coordination. So if you're coordinating well, then even if it's a third below, you can ask them to do the same kind of coordination that you just did, and then move it up, and then move it up, and then move it up to where it needs to be. If you're trying to coordinate for agility, for example, slow it down and do the thing that you want them to do, just at a slower speed. Make sure that it's agile at that slower speed. You can still do the demonstration even if you can't do the thing. You can do it slower, you can do it lower, you can do it higher, you can do it at a different place in the registration, you can use a different vowel, you can do it in a different way that still demonstrates the coordination we're looking for. Because it's the actual coordination that we're hoping the body will do, right? It's not, we don't want them to sound exactly like us. That's not actually the point of mimicry. The point of mimicry is not for you to copy me. That's not the point. The point is for you to get the coordination down. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you are, and if you're an adult demonstrating for a child, same thing. You can demonstrate this thing. You're just going to demonstrate it in a slightly more simplified way, right? You're not going to have your full-on opera singer voice or your full-on like whatever voice going on. You're just going to have a simplified, but you're still going to have the coordination that you're looking for. This is the whole point of the mimicry, is I'm going to coordinate my body in such a way to create a specific tonal outcome. You're going to listen to that tonal outcome and allow your body to coordinate to try to get that same tonal outcome. Is it going to be the same tonal outcome? No, because you're going to coordinate in your own body to create whatever that tonal outcome is, right? We're looking for coordination here in your specific body. We're not looking for you to sound exactly the same way that I do. I'm looking for you to coordinate in a similar way that I do, and whatever that looks like in your body. That's what I'm looking for. So if you're working with, what was the other one? Oh yeah, if you have a high voice and you're working with someone who has a low voice, same thing. Demonstrate an octave higher. That's fine. Whenever you can, demonstrate in the same octave. And same thing if you have a low voice and you're working with someone who has a high voice. Whenever you can, demonstrate in the same octave. But if you can't, that's fine too. We're not looking for. I think a bird just hit my window. Oh my gosh, the sadness. This is the time of year when they start to hit my window. Well, that was sad. Anyway, demonstrate in a different octave. We're looking for coordination. We're not looking for same tonal outcome. Okay, something else to do. Get the recordings, or use YouTube. Use YouTube. It is like right there. And all of the demonstrations ever possible for the whole world, for every single tonal outcome that you're looking for and every single kind of coordination that you're looking for are there at your fingertips. Use YouTube. I know. Kathy, it's so sad. We need to do something about that. Anyway, use YouTube. So if you know that your high belt demonstration isn't as good as you would like it to be, fine. Find like 7 different recordings. Yes, I need to get the stickers for my windows. Yes, thank you, Joelle. Yeah, totally. Find like 6 or 7 different recordings. Write down the timestamp somewhere, or keep a recording where the timestamp is. Save those somewhere in your YouTube list or on your favorites bar, or go old school and write it down, whatever you want to do. Save it and have those at the ready. What are the things that you save demonstrations of child singers doing the repertoire that your children are working with? Save YouTube videos of Joni Mitchell singing whatever, so you can listen together. But save the YouTube is such the friend. Save the folks going through passaggio. Save folks using different vowel modifications in different areas of the voice. Save examples of agility. Save like all of the things that you might feel like you are not able to demonstrate well, or not able to demonstrate in the same octave, or not able to demonstrate because you're an adult working with a child, not able to demonstrate in like a child voice, if you will. No problem. No problem. YouTube is your friend, and you can save just the chunk that is the one that you like, that is the most useful to you in whatever that song is, or whatever that exercise is, right? Yes, successful on Zoom. Yes, absolutely successful on Zoom. In fact, that's the only way I've been working for the last year, right? So yeah, absolutely successful on Zoom. You can do this over Zoom very easily. And you are also like, even if you're, in fact, it's terrific on Zoom because the call and response works really well. I will say, if you're working in this way, you may also want to get something like clean feed going on. It's not hard to set up, and this is a whole other thing that I'm not really going to talk about, but just throwing it out there. Clean feed, not hard to set up, and gives you like a couple of levels above your Zoom quality. So something to consider. Anyway, yes, totally doable. Oh, Lindley, I love that. Lindley says, I've been doing this for years and feeling validated. Do some teaching the Western way. Yes. Time is saved in the long run using mimicry. Absolutely. That has been my experience as well. Yes, exactly. And when you're working with folks who are going through a voice change, the demonstration in their range can also be so useful. Yeah, really does change, really does save time in the long run. Like I said, when I'm working with Western classical folks, like I don't have to go, there's so little that we have to clean up, if you will, from, and I'm working with folks who are excellent singers, well-trained singers who know how to read music and who have traditionally learned by reading music and who can do that well, but who are learning music where I don't have to like literally like hardly any coaching of it needed, right, on the music. Well, I shouldn't say hardly any, so much less coaching required on the music. It does take a little bit longer, or it can take a little bit longer depending on the kind of learner you are. And one last thing about this too, in terms of learning music, folks who have learning processing differences, so dyslexia or processing differences of other kinds, have been kind of cheating and doing this for years, right? So like you're talking about feeling validated. Folks who have learned music this way, they've been cheating and doing this for years. Folks who have learning differences and processing differences. But in lots of cases, in terms of learning music, they've been learning the music in this kind of like overall, I learned the whole aria, I listened to the whole, I listened to the whole song over and over and over again, and then I just kind of memorize it from listening to the whole song. So because of that, the learning hasn't been as good. What we want is those short chunks where the body really learns how to coordinate for that short chunk. Yeah, I know. Folks will learn how to sing, right? They will learn how to sing. And if you tell them that they can't do it that way and that the only way to learn is by reading this music, and they know intuitively that the best way for them to learn is actually by listening to the music, and that it's actually really frustrating for them to learn by reading the music, and that they're not necessarily going to get it right anyway, you're just raising singers who feel guilty about learning in their best way possible. And especially, like I said, now that we have this science, we know that mimicry is actually such a good way to learn music and to learn technical skills and to learn tonal outcomes. Like, we know that mimicry is just a beautiful way to learn music. We know this now from all of the information we have and the science we have. So no reason to tell people that they must learn from the music. That's a whole other conversation, but there's a lot of not great stuff going on when we consider that you must only learn by okay, not going into it now. Okay, so here's my encouragement to you, because we've gone on enough. Here's my encouragement to you for this week, to try out, to either release yourself from the guilt of maybe doing more rote learning in your lessons than you would want to, and say, hey, I'm going to embrace this, and I'm actually going to teach my students how to do this at home. So that we're not doing rote learning in the lesson necessarily, unless we're doing it to to learn music. I'm just going to teach them how to do this. I'm going to give them like 3 recordings that they would love, that have terrific, that where the music is well sung, where it's well coordinated, and I'm going to give them like these sections to listen to and learn in this very specific way, and I'm just going to teach them how to do it, rather than like feeling guilty about doing the stuff in the lesson, and rather than forcing them to learn it with the music, right? And rather than being like mad at them and resentful of them for not learning it the way that I told them to learn it, I'm going to actually teach them how to do it well. So release yourself from that guilt, right? Yes, exactly. Singing socialite, I agree. When we're told to like just sit at the piano and bonk out the notes. And you know what we learn when we sit at the piano and bonk out the notes, especially if we're not great piano players? You know what we learn in? We learn in Mary had a little lamb. Like, we learn it as if we are a percussion instrument ourselves. That's what we learn in. And then we have to learn that out. We are not percussion instruments, right? But if I plunk those notes out on the piano, that's what I learn in as I'm learning the music. It's not what we want, right? Release yourself. No, just talking to my therapist. It's all good. Release yourself from the guilt. And or start to try to have a little bit more mimicry in your exercises as well, and in your technical skills as well. So I've said this before, if you feel like you want to explain how to sing an exercise, stop yourself and say, here's how it goes, and sing it. Stop yourself, sing it. Yes. Okay, that's where we're gonna go today, I think. Yep, I think that's where we're gonna stop today. So I will post a couple of links in Facebook for sure. If you're listening on Instagram, I apologize because it doesn't really link well. Like the linky stuff isn't so great, so I apologize. And at some point, I will also put this up in a blog. If you're interested in working this out in a more practical way with sort of mentoring and, oh, yes. So Dance Always Studio on Instagram just threw out a truth bomb too. Doing this way where we're choosing who we want to listen to also helps us identify our aesthetic values and who we want to influence our interpretation. Right? So true. So true. Yes. So I will throw all of this onto, like I said, into a blog, blah, blah, blah. And if you're interested in working this out in a more practical way, in a mentored situation, I hope you will check out some of the things that I'm doing in May and April. Wait, no, June. June comes after May. Yeah. So in May and June. Take care. Take good care.